Again, we want to thank everybody for your timely submission of Q2 data. We're still working on the Q2 summary report, which we hope to put on the SSBCI website by the end of this month. Our goal today is to walk you through how to complete the template, how to complete and submit a template in our SSBCI Capital our reporting portal. We will reserve time for questions, but like I said, please, we want to make this interactive. So please raise your hand, jump in, come off mute, submit questions to the chat if your chat is working. If you have more detailed transaction questions or specific program or policy questions, we will ask you to submit this to the mailbox. We will put the link for the mailbox, the address for the mailbox in the chat momentarily, but that's ssbci_information@treasury.gov. So the presenter today's training will be Sue Chang. She will provide an overview of the program requirements as they relate to quarterly reports for the capital side. She will provide some guidance on program income, admin, some best practices and tips just based on all the reports that she's seen come in throughout this process we started a couple of years ago. Grace will go over the template. She will provide a template and give you some best practices and some key validation points. She will run over those. Jay Flowers will jump in and he will demo how to access your template in the portal and also how to submit your template. If we have enough time, Raisa will jump in with some Q&A, just some tests and some knowledge, and hopefully that will be interactive. And so hopefully we'll have time for that. Like always, we will share this information we discussed today via, we will share the decks as well as the video link to access the training, and hope you utilize that training for your new staff or to refresh for refreshers. I will stop talking and turn over to Sue. She will get us started on the overview. Thank you again for joining us today. Sue, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mima. Okay, thank you for joining today's quarterly report training. Today's training, as Mima said, I will provide an overview of the quarterly report requirements, and we'll cover some of the data elements on the quarterly report, and we'll also provide an overview of the unenrollment process. Okay, starting with the first slide on quarterly reporting. Okay, so all participants must submit a quarterly reports on the use of SSBCI funds, right? And to support your reporting requirements, Treasury has created a customized reporting template for each jurisdiction. The template contains pre-populated data and data elements that will need to be completed, which Grace will demonstrate later in the presentation. We recommend you review your pre-populated data on the quarterly report template. For example, if you have material modifications or reallocation to your approved program amounts that you expect to see reflected on your quarterly report, but do not, please contact us before you submit your quarterly report so we can make the necessary corrections. There are 4 key data elements that the jurisdiction will need to complete on the template, which are outlined on this slide. The first one is program EOT. EOT is expanded, obligated, or transfer for programs and 171 services to portfolio companies. Admin EOT, program income, and cap charge-offs. So those are the 4 basic data elements that needs to be completed when submitting your quarterly report. Okay, moving to the next slide. Okay, the quarterly report must be submitted within 30 days after the end of each quarterly reporting period. For Q3 reporting, the submission deadline is for October 30th, and it covers the period July 1st to September 30th. We will open the portal for submission on October 1st, and the portal will close on October 30th. To avoid any issues with uploading or accessing the portal, we recommend not waiting until the last day to submit. So definitely submit early is highly encouraged to avoid any issues with portal access. We generally send out 3 reminders, one at the beginning of submission window, another one in the middle of the month, and the last one on the submission deadline date. If you do not receive the email reminders on the 1st of October and would like to receive reminders, please submit a request to the SSBCI inbox, which I think Grace dropped in the chat. Also, if you have any questions, of course, related to the portal or template, please reach out to the SSBCI inbox. Okay, moving to the next slide. Okay. Each jurisdiction is required to submit a quarterly report starting with the first full calendar quarter following your executed allocation with agreement with Treasury. And as mentioned earlier in the previous slide, submission deadline for Q3 closes on October 30th. The Q3 templates will be available to view and download by end of this month, so please be on the lookout for your Q3 reporting template. You may upload your completed template anytime between the submission between October 1st, which is the beginning of submission window, and October 30th. We encourage jurisdiction to submit before this deadline. Okay, moving to the next slide on EOT. Okay, so on this slide, we wanted to go over some reporting guidelines on expanded obligator transfer, which we commonly refer to as EOT. The first point I want to clarify is that for quarterly reporting, you're reporting EOT for SSBCI funds only. Private capital is not reported on the quarterly report. Starting on the left, for expanded, the key requirement is that the funds must be dispersed. For example, SSBCI funds must be dispersed to a specific borrower in a direct lending transaction, or dispersed to a lender as part of a set aside to cover a loan guarantee or cloud deposit. In a cap transaction, it would be dispersed to a lender to cover federal contribution to the cap reserve account. And for VC and equity direct transaction, SSBCI funds must be directly invested in a specific business pursuant to an investment agreement. Okay, so moving to obligated. For transactions to be considered obligated, SSBCI funds must be committed, pledge, or promise in writing. Okay, the key to distinguish expanded from obligated in a loan or credit transaction is that for the obligation, the loan has not contractually closed, whereas for expanded transaction has closed. So that's the big distinction there. And so, for example, for direct equity to be considered obligated, there should be signed investment agreement between the jurisdiction or its contracted entity and the investee committing the funds, but the funds have not been received by the business. There's a commitment to fund, but that has not been funded. For VC fund investment to be considered obligated, there should be commitment to a VC fund through a signed LPA agreement, and the obligation is always at the fund level. Lastly, last column, transfer. The main thing to note for transfer is that there should be a documented need to fund a loan or investment or to pay for allowable expenses. Okay, so that covers EOT. Moving to the next slide. Okay, so the quarterly report template includes a section for reporting program allocated EOT and another section for reporting admin expenses EOT. The program costs for loan, investment, and funds for 171 for services for portfolio companies are reported under program allocated EOT. All other expenses are considered administrative and should be reported under the administrative cost EOT on the quarterly report. That's it on this slide. Moving to next slide on reporting venture capital commitments. Okay, so this slide is obviously relevant to jurisdiction with a VC fund program. For a VC fund transaction, the total SSBCI commitment consists of the program costs, 171, and administrative costs. So for the SSBCI commitment amount for program costs and 171 are reported under program allocated EOT. Admin costs will be reported under EOT for administrative costs, as explained in the previous slide. However, only the expanded portion are reported on the quarterly report. On this slide, we have an example for reporting SSBCI commitment for a VC fund, which I'm going to quickly go over. So this particular fund, the ABC Venture Fund, has a total commitment of $1 million. The $1 million commitment comprised of $36,000 in budgeted operating expenses, plus another $964 for the program costs, including 171. And additional information on this fund is that this fund expanded $5,000 of the $36,000 budgeted operating expenses related to their share of the fund formation costs. So how do we report this information on the quarterly report? Right. Under program allocated EOT, this jurisdiction will report $964,000, which is the SSBCI funds for the program, including 171. And under admin cost EOT, you will report the expanded admin only. In this example, you will report the $5,000. Okay, so that was my quick summary of how to report VC fund commitments. Of course, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, moving to the next slide. So program income is defined as gross income received by the jurisdiction that is directly generated by SSBCI supported activity or earned as a result of SSBCI funds during the program period. Okay, so we listed some examples of what program income here on this slide. Sorry about that. Okay, I just want to highlight the third bullet on this slide here. That is any interest earned on idle funds that have not been invested or lent to a small business should be reported on the quarterly report. So we expect to see the program income on the quarterly report for any interest earned on idle funds. Okay. In addition to allocated funds, jurisdiction may also use program income to pay administrative expenses, which I would demonstrate the reporting process in the next slide. Before I do that, I just want to also clarify some misconception regarding program income. So program income does not include repayment of principal or return of investment or return of invested capital. Once the repayment of principal or return of invested capital are redeployed to new loans, they will actually be considered recycle funds, right? Which I will cover, both of these topics I will cover in the next few slides. Okay, moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Admin expenses may be paid using program income, provided that there's sufficient program income. For jurisdictions that want to use program income to pay administrative expenses, it is important to note that any admin expenses that are paid using program income cannot be counted towards the 80% EOT for your second or third tranche disbursement request. However, if you decide to use program income to pay admin expenses, the amount used for admin expenses should be reduced from both the program income and the expenses line via an adjustment on the quarterly report. I'm going to walk through an example on the next slide. Okay, can you do next slide? Thank you. Okay, in this example, jurisdiction A program income balance as of Q2 is $200,000. And in this quarter, the jurisdiction earned additional interest of $150,000. So at this point, the total program income is $350,000, right? Jurisdiction A decides to pay admin costs totaling $250,000 in Q3 with program income. It may do so since it has sufficient program income. So on the Q3 report, jurisdiction would report the interest earned of $150,000 in the current quarter under program income. So you see that the $150,000. This is shown in blue on the slide. The admin costs paid using program income for $250,000 would be reported as a negative amount under both the program income and admin expenses EOT line via an adjustment. This is shown on the slide in red. So the adjustment of $250,000 for admin expenses, and then there's another adjustment of $250,000 for program income. Both are reported as negative amount. Okay, I also want to reiterate again that if any admin expenses were paid using program income, those admin expenses, in this example, the $250,000, cannot be counted towards your 80% requirement for subsequent tranche requests and should not be reported on your disbursement request form. So please keep this in mind when you decide to use program income to pay any admin expenses. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I put it the definition of recycle funds in my first bullet point here, which spells out what is recycle funds. Okay, the most important thing to keep in mind is that SSBCI funds are only considered recycled once the funds are redeployed into new loans or investment. And until the funds are redeployed into new loans or investment, jurisdiction should hold any return SSBCI invested capital. As a reminder, any interest earned on the return capital prior to redeployment must be reported as program income. So let's walk through two scenarios that may come up when completing the quarterly report. In the first scenario, this jurisdiction has $100,000 program income it wants to deploy into a new loan, right? In this scenario, the jurisdiction will report as an adjustment for program income. It would be an adjustment because the jurisdiction initially reported the $100,000 as program income, and this $100,000 is now being reduced via an adjustment. Okay, the $100,000 deployment into a new loan, also known as recycle, will be reported under recycle funds EOT under a current quarter. Okay, so that's how you report program income that you're utilizing to deploy into new loans. Okay, in scenario two, the jurisdiction receive $100,000 repayment of principal and subsequently redeployed the $100,000 into new loan in Q3. On the quarterly report, this jurisdiction will report the $100,000 under recycle funds EOT for the current quarter. Likewise, the same will apply for return of invested capital that has been redeployed. It's important to note here that in scenario two, if the jurisdiction received the repayment of principal or return of invested capital, but the money was not redeployed into new loans or investment, it would not be reported anywhere on the quarterly report. It will only be reported once it has been redeployed. So that's the key distinction. You hold on to the investment until it gets redeployed. Okay, moving to next slide. Okay, this slide covers adjustments to quarterly report. So adjustments to your prior quarter can be made on your current quarter report. And there are many reasons for adjustment. They should include removing obligated loans on investment that is no longer expected to close, or you could be correcting a clerical error such as transposition of a number or as when directed by SSBCI. If you have adjustments to report, please provide brief explanation for the adjustment in the additional information section of the quarterly report. We've listed some examples on this slide you may consider when providing your explanation. Please note that please make your explanation brief, but it should include an explanation regarding the full amount of the adjustment. I also want to note that for jurisdiction that signed the allocation agreement in the second quarter of this year, Q3 will be the first time that your jurisdiction reports, so there shouldn't be any adjustment. Adjustment is really meant for adjusting prior data that were submitted to Treasury. For jurisdiction that we're reporting first time, I'm going to walk through how to report prior quarter information in the next slide. Okay, thank you. Okay, so for jurisdiction that are reporting for the first time and have EOT from a quarter prior to their first reporting period, the jurisdiction should report the prior quarter activity along with your current quarter activity in the current quarter field and not report the prior quarter activity as an adjustment. As an example, if a jurisdiction executed the allocation agreement in June of this year in EOT, SSBCI funds of $100, and during Q3, which is the first time the jurisdiction will be reporting, the jurisdiction EOT additional $200 of SSBCI funds. For the third quarter reporting, your jurisdiction should input $300 in the current quarter input field. Another example would be a program income. If the jurisdiction has program income from the quarter prior to the required reporting period, the jurisdiction should report the prior quarter along with the current quarter and the current quarter field of the report. Okay, that covers the prior quarter transaction. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so on this slide, I will provide an overview of the unenrollment process. A potential non-compliant transaction may be identified by either the jurisdiction or Treasury. If your jurisdiction identifies a potential non-compliant transaction, please reach out to the SSBCI inbox prior to taking any actions. Jurisdictions will need Treasury's approval before unenrolling a non-compliant transaction. And to clarify, only expanded non-compliant transaction would need to be unenrolled. For obligated transactions, they do not require unenrollment. It would just be an adjustment to the quarterly report. Okay, whether the non-compliant transaction is identified by the jurisdiction or by Treasury, the first step in the unenrollment process is for a jurisdiction to provide Treasury with an unenrollment request letter and a supporting document, which we refer to as Attachment A. These two documents will assist us in determining whether a transaction is non-compliant with SSBCI program requirements. Attachment A will be provided by Treasury to gather information related to the potential non-compliant transactions. Okay, so step 2 is if the non-compliance has occurred, Treasury will provide a conditional approval email to proceed with unenrolling transaction, and will seek supporting documentation for the replenishment of the SSBCI account for the amount of the unenrollment. Step 3, once Treasury receives sufficient documentation on the replenishment of SSBCI funds, Treasury will then send the jurisdiction an unenrollment acknowledgement email. The last step, the final step, is after you receive the acknowledgement email, is then to make the adjustment on the next quarterly reporting submission. Okay, I just want to point out that Treasury's approval of any unenrollment and replenishment does not preclude the OIG from conducting its own review. Okay. Now that we've covered an overview of the process, let's move to the next slide. Thank you. I want to just highlight some important part of the process. The two things to keep in mind while your unenrollment is active. And also as a reminder, the unenrollment process is still ongoing until we receive sufficient documentation demonstrating that the jurisdiction has replenished SSBCI's account and that jurisdiction has received an acknowledgement email. First, please do not make an adjustment on the quarterly report until you receive the acknowledgement email from SSBCI. And secondly, until the jurisdiction receives that email from SSBCI, your jurisdiction should be completing the modified certification for each quarterly report submission while the unenrollment process is ongoing. For context, the difference between the modified certification and the standard certification is the language in the red box on the screenshot that you see here on the slide. The modified cert states that your jurisdiction is implementing its approved SSBCI program in accordance with program requirements, except for the identified non-compliant transactions highlighted on the slide. So if you have potential non-compliant transaction, you don't see the modified cert in section 4 of the portal, please reach out to us immediately, and we will work with you to change to a modified cert in the portal before you submit. Right. Jurisdiction can identify that they are completing a modified cert in 2 places in the portal, in the section 4 tab and at the top of this section. Both are shown here, circled in red. You do not see the modified cert, you are submitting a standard cert. So please pay attention to ensure you are serving the appropriate certification before you hit the submit button. And of course, Jay will cover the certification process in the portal later in the training. We want to emphasize again, so to reach out to the inbox regarding any potential non-compliant transactions. We'll work with you to determine if one, if the non-compliance has occurred, and two, based on the initial discussion, help you start on the unenrollment process. Okay, so that covers unenrollment. Next slide. Okay. So on this slide, we put together a few reporting tips that you may find helpful when you complete your quarterly report. The quarterly report contains data validations and conditional formatting, which Grace will show you later in the presentation. The most important thing to note here is that please do not submit your report if any of the fields are red. And if you are unsure on how to correct the fields are red, please reach out to us before submitting your report. The first tip I just want to highlight is to check that the sum of program EOT and admin EOT do not exceed the cumulative disbursed amount. Essentially, you should not report more than what has been dispersed to your jurisdiction. So I also want to stress that please review your pre-populated data on your quarterly report. If you find any discrepancies or errors, please reach out so we can look into it before you submit your quarterly report. Okay. All right, I think I have one more slide on accessing the report. Okay. The user will have a different level of access based on the assigned role in the portal. Jay will be going over a different level of access in his demonstration. I just want to highlight a few access here. So the most restrictive is the account administrator. This user can view and download. And then the authorized representative role can view, download, and upload a completed report. And the authorized representative is only user who can certify and submit the report. If the user does not have the authorized representative role, an error message will appear, preventing the user from submitting the report. So please make sure your jurisdiction has the correct roles assigned in the portal to allow for a timely submission. Okay, I think that concludes my part of the quarterly report training. Happy to take any questions. You may go off mute. Of course, you also have opportunity to ask questions at the end after Grace and Raisa and Jay are done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'm going to start the demonstration of the quarterly reporting template. So on screen here, you should be seeing an Excel report. And like Sue mentioned, this is going to be customized specifically for your participating jurisdiction. So you'll be able to download this document from the portal, and you'll have a single tab named Quarterly Report here that will comprise the entirety of the QR. On the quarterly report, you will see gray and white cells. So all of the gray cells, you will not be able to edit those. Those are either going to be pre-populated with data for you, or they're going to be calculated based on data that you enter into the report. Everything that you need to touch will be in white here. So this is where you'll be able to enter your data. Much of the information included in the report has tooltips. So if you hover over any of these little red sections, you'll get an explanation of what that field is. And that's just coming from the capital reporting guidance, but we're putting it on here so it's easy to read as well. So what is included in the quarterly report is some information about your jurisdiction, as well as the quarterly reporting period here. You'll have your total potential allocation. So this is the total amount of funding that you'll receive throughout the program. And then your cumulative funds dispersed. This is how much funding you should have received to date, or as of the beginning of the reporting period here. If any of this looks wrong to you, if you've received another round of funding, just go ahead and reach out and we'll get that corrected. We'll also pre-populate all of the programs that your jurisdiction is running. So the name of the program, the type of the program administrator, as well as the program allocation, which will come from your approved allocation agreement. This may be the number that you agreed to in your initial application, or if you've had a modification to your program and moved any of your funds around, you should see that updated program allocation here. So in the EOT section up top here, you'll have your cumulative as of prior quarter end. So if this is your second, third, fourth time reporting, you will see this these cells here populated with the data that you reported on your prior quarterly report. If this is your first time reporting, this cumulative as of prior quarter end section will be 0 because you've not reported anything yet. So that will be everything from your approved programs. The next two sections will cover information at the jurisdiction level. So you have your administrative costs, direct and indirect administrative costs. Same thing, prior quarter end, space for you to enter adjustments in current quarter. And then we'll also pre-populate or calculate these numbers for you here. So this will be your administrative cost threshold, and that's the dollar amount that you're allowed to spend towards administrative costs under your current tranche. So for the first tranche, that's 5% of your dispersed funds, and then 3% for the second and third tranche. Again, you should see this administrative cost threshold number increase as you receive additional tranche of funding. And then the last section is your program income and cap charge-offs. Again, these are reported across the jurisdiction level. And then at the bottom here, you have space to leave your comments for adjustments or any other comments in the document. So I'll go through a quick example of entering some information, EOT information, into the quarterly report. So I'm going to start with my program EOT here. So again, this is an example where we have prior quarter information that has previously been reported. Let's say the first thing I need to do is make an adjustment. I realized I had a clerical error, or like Sue was mentioning, maybe one of my obligations did not close. So I can go ahead, find the program that I want to make that adjustment for, and enter that in. This could be a positive or a negative adjustment. In this case, we'll just go ahead and say negative 20,000. Whenever you make an adjustment, remember to leave a comment as to why that's happening. So for our loan guarantee program, we have a 20K adjustment. We'll just say due to an obligation that didn't close. And that would be sufficient explanation for that adjustment. From here, I can go ahead and enter my current quarter EOT. We'll say for our loan participation program, we have 5 million in EOT. Maybe for our collateral support program, we don't have any EOT for this quarter. We can just leave that as 0. And then for our venture fund program, we're going to go ahead and say we have 4 million for EOT. You'll see when I enter that 4 million, I'm going to get a pop-up error. So this error message will explain to you what might be causing your issues. So if we read through the options here, 1 and 2 must be numeric, must be positive. Okay, we've met those conditions. Number 3 here says current quarter amount plus adjustments cannot exceed our program allocation. So that is our issue. We entered $4 million, and since we already had 6 million, our cumulative total of 10 million is exceeding the 9 million that we've allocated towards the venture fund program. So I'll have to make a change here since we can't go over that number. So let's try 3 million instead. 3 million, we were able to enter that and no pop-up issue, but we're still getting some red highlighted cells. So the problem that we're seeing now is that our total cumulative EOT across all of our programs is a little over 26 million. Plus our administrative EOT is 1.2 million, which brings us to, 27.5. and that is exceeding our cumulative funds dispersed. So this is an issue we see sometimes, and like Sue mentioned, you cannot EOT more funds than have been given to you. So if you're seeing any of these red highlighted cells, even if you didn't get a pop-up error, there's something wrong and you'll need to make some sort of adjustment. So we can either, lower down our EOT, maybe we have other adjustments that we forgot to calculate for, or whatever the issue is. Give us a call if you can't figure it out, but you'll need to correct something to get rid of these red highlighted cells. So we'll just bring that down to $2.5 million for the example here, and that will complete our program EOT. If you have any recycled funding, you can enter that in this section, pretty much the same way with your adjustments and your current quarter. So now we'll move down into the administrative costs and our program income. So first we'll say program income, we earned $50,000 in program income for this quarter. And we'd like to spend $100,000 in direct administrative costs. All right, I was able to enter both of those, no red cells, no pop-up errors. So if that is the correct figures for your quarterly report, as long as you've got the comments for your adjustment, you could go ahead and submit. I'm just going to also run through a brief example if we had additional administrative costs, how you could enter that. So let's say instead of $100,000 in admin direct, we have $300,000. Again, once we enter that, we see some red and we get a pop-up saying we have an issue. And this issue is due to our cumulative administrative costs exceeding our admin cost threshold. So the way that you can get around this, if you choose, is to use program income to offset your administrative expenses. So the way that we would enter that, to get to our $300,000, say we're going to use $200,000 of program income. So we have enough program income to do so. We have $550,000. So I'll start by entering a negative $200,000 adjustment in the program income. I'll also enter that same negative $200,000 adjustment in our direct administrative costs. And then I can change my current quarter to $300,000, and we don't get any issues. No more red, no more pop-ups. So that is how you would report a program income adjustment for administrative costs. And same thing, since we made an adjustment, we need to make a comment. So we'll just say $200,000 in program income used to offset our direct admin.
Grace, I just want to jump in just to clarify.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure, like, you cannot exceed your 5% or 3% the first instead and 3% the second. But you can use program income to pay for admin expenses. So I just want to kind of clear up that, we're not getting around the reporting. It's really you're actually using program income to pay for your admin expenses. Just want to clarify that. Thanks.
Of course. Yep. So anything that you're using to offset here as your adjustment for program income, like I said, cannot be used towards your 80% EOT when you're coming in for your disbursement request. So that is essentially all that is included in the quarterly report. Are there any questions? Okay, I will pass it off to Jay Flowers. He's going to do a demonstration of the portal.
Thank you, Grace. So I'm going to start the demo of the portal. Inside the chat, I put the links to our portal. That top link is going to take you directly to our SSBCI homepage. This is the link that you would use if you only have interactions with your jurisdiction with Treasury, only SSBCI program. If you have other programs that you're working with Treasury for, then you click on that second link, and that second link takes you to a different splash page, of which I can show you in a second. Looks like there is a poll going on. Should that be closed? Otherwise, I'll start with the demo.
Yeah, go ahead and start with your demo, Jay.
Okay. Okay. So that first link would actually take you straight to this page. And you can know that you're on this page because you're going to see the SSBCI homepage up inside the URL. That second link that I said that you can use if you have other programs that you're dealing with Treasury for, it would take you to this splash page here where you could dismiss this warning, and then you can scroll down and choose whichever program you choose to interact with while you logged into your portal session. So we're going to jump into the SSBCI program. And once you're inside there, we have a left-hand navigation. This is where you can choose your applications, program reports, disbursement requests, and then the TA and SBOT program as well. So we're going to jump into the capital program reports. And once you click on capital program reports, it defaults to the quarterly report page. Once you're ready and it's time for annual reports, it's just in this other tab right here, and you just click on that to jump over to the annual reports. So we're going to jump back over to the quarterly reports. And you're not going to have as many records as I do. This is in my testing environment. But I do have 2 records set up for today's demo, and we're going to jump into the first one, which is going to be a standard submission, quarterly report submission. So we're going to jump into that record. And once we're inside that record, we still have the left-hand navigation when you can go from section to section. And then on the bottom of the pages, we also have a navigation where you can go back and you can go next and back with inside of the quarterly report area. We also have what we call a widget on the top right-hand side, and it's going to give you the status. It gives you jurisdiction name, the reporting period, and the deadline for submission. Again, I'm in my testing environment, so this information is not accurate. What you're going to see is you're going to see July 1, 2025 through September 30, 2025, and then you're going to see a deadline of October 30, 2025. So we're going to go back to page 1. And in red text, you will also see that same information. You're going to see July through September 30th, and then you're going to see October 1 through October 30th here once the portal is open and ready for you guys to go in. On this front page, we also have a couple of instructives and a couple of guides. We have the reporting guidance, that is this link right here. We have our policy guidelines, which is this link here. And then we have a quarterly report user guide, which is this link here. And then if you ever need to reach out to us, we also provided the inbox, and that is the SSBCI_information at treasury.gov. So again, if you have any questions about anything related to the quarterly reports or any other programs, feel free to reach us at SSBCI and we'll be able to get back to you. We're going to move over to section 2, which is the participating jurisdiction information. Again, this is my testing environment, so this is not going to be accurate to you, but we provide the implementing entity information here. We just ask that you check this out, make sure everything is accurate. And if there are any issues with that, please let us know, and if we can get that corrected in our back end so it accurately reflects your implementing entity name. Moving down just a little bit, we do have a context area. So we realize that some jurisdictions may have different roles within the organization, and you may have some turnover from people moving on or people coming in. And we wanted to give you this chart that shows everybody that's inside of your account with Treasury's SSBCI program. It also shows the roles on the right-hand side. So you can always log into the portal, check this out, and see what the different roles are for your different individuals in your jurisdiction's account. We've also given the ability to self-service. So in this paragraph here, the word page, if we click that, it's going to take us over to the Treasury COVID-19 Relief Hub. And then when you're on this page, you do have the ability to add individuals or alter or change or update your contact records for the roles for the individuals. You'll be landing on the introduction page. If this is your first time going in and updating roles, you will have to click this certification. It's basically just saying that you are the person that is allowed to add individuals to the account for logging into the portal. Once you've gone through that certification, it's just simply putting your name in here and clicking submit. Then this designation form will open up. And just simply click on here. And then it shows that same chart that we just saw over in the quarterly report. And you have the ability to add a new contact. You have the ability to edit roles in here. So we're going to go and check the add a new contact. The important thing for adding a new contact is we require ID.me in order to access the portal. So it's best if you add that person here if they have never done ID.me. And then once they're added here, then they will go in and finish their ID.me registration. Then everything would be linked. If that person already has an existing ID.me, you still have to add that individual's information here, but you will need to reach out to us so that we can make sure that we find that email address inside our systems and then make sure that it's attached to the appropriate account. So once you add the required information, everything is required, has a red asterisk next to it. So first name, last name, title, email address. Then you can select the different roles that you want to assign for that person. And as Sue mentioned a little earlier, as a part of her training, we do have 3 different levels of access. We have the account admin, where they can view and download the quarterly report inside the temple and inside the portal. We also have the capital account POC, where they can view, download, and they can also upload a completed quarterly report. And then we have the capital authorized representative, and this is the person that is the least restrictive, where they can view, download, upload, and they're the only role that can submit and certify within portal. So one thing you just want to make sure that we're communicating, the authorized representative is not your authorized official. It doesn't have to be your authorized official on your application. These are just roles that manage access within inside of the portal. So once you've added the correct level of role for the new individual, you also have some communication roles. So if you want that person to receive capital reporting information, TA reporting, SBOP, or if you don't want them to receive any kind of communication, you can manage that here as well. So once you have that person's information added in and all of their required information, I'm not going to do that because it's totally disconnected in my test environment. You would just simply click Add New Contact. And in our systems, there's no really limit to how many people you can add in here. So add as many appropriate people as you feel you need to get done what you need to get done with your jurisdiction. So we're going to go back to the quarterly report. And well, before we do that, you can also edit these roles, and it would just be the edit button here. You're back into the record, and then you can choose the different roles that you want to add or change for that individual. So we're going to jump back over to the quarterly report. And this was the page 2 where we're going to participate in jurisdiction information. So we're going to move over to page 3, which is going to be your Excel upload section. So we do have information here with a really an abridged version of what both Sue and Grace went over a little earlier about what we're expecting on your quarterly reports. And then down towards the bottom third is where you're going to have your template. And again, that's going to be available when a couple days before the portal opens up on October 1st. And we suggest that you come here as quick as you can, make sure everybody has their access, and then start working on your quarterly report just to get it in well before the deadline. Once you had your quarterly report, your template downloaded, and you've worked with it offline and saved it to your computer, you can come back into the portal and come to section 3, and you're going to be uploading that in this section right here. And simply click Upload Files, navigate to your computer where you saved the completed template, and you click it, and it's going to give an uploader. And when the blue done appears, then you know that your file has been uploaded, and you just click done here. And that should be dropping that file within inside of this table down on the bottom. You may not have noticed it, but the upload file button has disappeared once you've uploaded the file. If you clicked on the wrong file and you wanted to change the file while you're still inside the reporting window, you can come back in and you can click the file and then delete that file and then re-upload everything, the appropriate files. Once you have everything uploaded, then you can move over to section 4, and this is the section where you're going to be submitting everything. We basically just give a breakdown of what the quarterly report is and implementing entity, and that the undersigned has the authority to execute and deliver the certification on behalf of the participating jurisdiction. And I always suggest just copy your name here and paste it into the box here. And I say that because this area is both case and space sensitive. So if I change that to that lowercase s, it's not going to let me certify and submit. You're going to get a red error. Just simply go back in and make it so that it looks exactly like the name is presented on the left-hand side. Then once you've done that, just click certify and submit. You'll get a green success. And then if you hit refresh, you'll see the status change from draft over to submitted. So that is submitting the regular or standard quarterly report. Now we're going to go back to what Sue was talking about a little earlier, where we have a modified quarterly report that we want to submit. So we're going to go back into the portal. We click back over here on Capital Program Reports. We're already on quarterly reports, and I'm going to choose this next record that I know is a modified record. And a way, again, that you'll know that this is a modified submission record is you're going to see the word modified here on section 4, which is different. And then once you're inside of here, you're going to see modified. So again, we're going to jump that to section 1, same navigation behavior. Section 1, section 2, same implementing entity information, same contacts area. And again, same navigation. You scroll down the bottom. I can get to my next section. Section 3 is still going to have your designated template. So again, download it here, work with it offline, come back into the portal, click your upload files. You find the folder where you save those files, select it, hit open. You wait for the blue done, click done. The file is going to be inside of the table down at the bottom. And then we're jumping over to section 4, because here is where that appendix or attachment A that Sue mentioned a little earlier needs to be submitted. So we also give an example of that attachment A, and you can click that here to download that. Again, work with it offline. Once you have it all ready and ready to submit, you can come back into the portal. You click your upload files, navigate to where you have it saved. And we're going to upload that. Wait for the blue done. Once that is done, then hit save. It's going to drop it inside of the table here. And same way that we certified the standard or regular quarterly report. Just copy your name here, paste it in here, click certify and submit. You get a green success. And you have submitted over here as well. So that is really it for the demo today. Before I turn it back over to Raisa, are there any questions?
Yeah, I had put a question in a private message to you, but I wondered, can outside contractors for the jurisdictions be added as a view only within the portal if the permission's given to us contractors by the jurisdiction?
I believe that is between you and your jurisdiction. We know that we've had plenty of contractors that have logged in on behalf of jurisdictions, but they're given the most restrictive role, which is going to be your account admin. And this is the one that can view, it can only download the template. They cannot upload a finished template, and they cannot submit with that account admin role. So the short of it is yes, it's up to the jurisdiction, and then they typically give out the most restrictive role, which is going to be the account admin role.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, Raisa. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Grace and Jay. We will turn over to Raisa. I know she was a little proactive about the questions. So I'll turn it over to her. We'll do some testing of our knowledge, and hopefully we can have some participation from everyone. And if you do have additional questions, please stay on and we will address those questions. Raisa, do you want to do the poll?
Sure. Thanks, Mayma. Yep. So like Mayma said, we're going to go ahead and get into a poll. So these questions are actually all refreshers from what you've heard today in this training. So hopefully you guys can participate and show off your skills. All right, starting with the first question. Question 1, Mayma, can you confirm you can see question 1?
Yes.
Awesome. So the first question is, quarterly reports with cells highlighted in red may be submitted. So if you have a quarterly report that has red cells highlighted in red, can you still submit your quarterly report, or should you still submit your quarterly report? Okay, answers are coming in. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Okay, I'll give you guys about 30 more seconds on this one. Today we have about 6 questions. All right, ending the poll in about 5 seconds. All right, ending the poll. Perfect. Most of you guys got this question correct. The answer is false. So jurisdictions should not submit their quarterly reports with highlighted cells that are red. If your final report contains red cells, you should reach out to the inbox prior to submitting. So like Grace mentioned earlier, it's conditional formatting. So if it highlights into red, that means that either the value in that cell or in the cells that are used to sum up that cell are either not expected by the report or may not be correct. So usually this means it's an inputting error. So just double check your inputs and you can try to correct that error on your own. All right, so now we're going to head into question 2. All right, question 2. What type of funds should be reported on the quarterly report? So this is a multiple choice question. Is it SSBCI funds and private capital, SSBCI funds only, B, or C, SSBCI funds, private capital, and any other financing? So what are we looking for on this quarterly report? Are we looking for total amounts, your SSBCI plus your private? Are we looking for just SSBCI funds or SSBCI funds, private capital, and any other financing? All right, awesome. I will give this another minute or so. All right, awesome. Good participation. Okay, 20 more seconds. Answers are still coming in. Okay, gonna go ahead and end the poll. And the vast majority of you were correct. So we are only looking for SSBCI funds on the quarterly report. So just reiterating what Sue mentioned earlier, also highlighting what Grace was showing earlier on the presentation too, that if your what you're reporting doesn't amount to what you have been allocated, it's going to send up some flags. So that can only be the case if we're only looking at SSBCI funds. All right, awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing this one. All right, question number 3. Once Treasury provides conditional approval for an unenrollment, the unenrollment process is complete. Is that true or false? So once you receive conditional approval from Treasury, is that the end of the unenrollment process? Okay, answers are coming in. This is back to what Sue was discussing earlier on the unenrollment slides. So what step is conditional approval? Is it the final step? Is it another step? Let's see. All right, going to give about 10 more seconds. Okay, ending the poll. Awesome, most of you guys are correct. So receiving conditional approval is only the second step in the unenrollment process. The unenrollment process will be considered complete once Treasury has received the documentation demonstrating the replenishment and once the jurisdiction received the unenrollment acknowledgement email. Okay, so that is the end of the line for unenrollments. Let's go ahead into question 4. All right, question 4. What should a jurisdiction do if it has an obligated loan that was previously reported and will not be funded and will not close? So if there's an obligated transaction that you have and you don't anticipate that it will be closed as previously reported on the quarterly report, what is your next step here? Is it A, contact SSBCI to begin the unenrollment process, B, contact SSBCI to begin the unenrollment process and make an adjustment on the next quarterly report? Or is it C, report as an adjustment on the quarterly report? Okay, the operative word here being an obligation. So what do you do in this case of an obligation? I will go ahead and give you guys about 10 more seconds. Okay. All right, gonna go ahead and end this poll. All right, so again, most of you got this correct. So for an obligated transaction, like Sue mentioned earlier, there are 3 acceptable justifications for adjusting prior quarter reported allocated funds EOT. The first of which was removing an obligated loan or investment that is no longer expected to close. The second is correcting a clerical error, and the third is as directed by SSBCI. So if an obligated loan is no longer expected to close, just provide an explanation of the adjustment and make an adjustment on the quarterly report. When we are talking about unenrollment, that is only in reference to closed transactions, okay? Not obligated transactions. Obligated transactions, the only remedy is on the quarterly report, making an adjustment. Okay.
And Rachel, do you want to clarify when they make the adjustment, they will also include an explanation about the obligation not expected to close?
That's correct. So once you do that obligation, or once you do that adjustment, we want to see in the additional comments box a little brief sentence or two about what that adjustment was for. Yep, that's what we want to see. All right, question 5. When should SSBCI funds deployed prior to the jurisdiction's required reporting period be reported to Treasury? Is it A, never? Is it B, on the jurisdiction's first required quarterly report? Or is it C, jurisdiction should send the amount via email to Treasury? So what this is in reference to is jurisdictions that have a signed allocation agreement. And as you know, the signed allocation agreement can be signed in one reporting period, but you are not actually required to report for that reporting period. You would be required to report for the next. So what do you do with any funds that you have deployed in that first period? Do we never want to hear about it? Do we want you to report it on your next quarterly report or your very first quarterly report? Or do we want you to just send us that amount via email? What should you do? This is for first-time reporters, something that is important for first-time reporters to know. Okay, I'll give this about 5 more seconds. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Great job, guys. Almost 100% got this right. So for jurisdictions that have executed their allocation agreement and have expended, obligated, or transferred funds from the prior quarter, those funds should be reported on the quarterly report in the current quarter field. Okay, and moving on to our last question here. All right. Program income that is used to pay administrative costs should be reported as an adjustment under, is it A, program allocated funds EOT? Is it B, program income? Is it C, direct, indirect administrative costs, or is it both B and C? So if you utilize program income to pay for administrative expenses, where is it reported on the quarterly report? Okay, answers coming in. Awesome. Okay. Gonna give this about 5 more seconds. Okay, all right, gonna go ahead and end this poll and share the results. All right, the answer is D, both B and C. So like Sue had mentioned earlier in her presentation, you report the full amount of program income used to pay administrative costs as an adjustment, and you're also adjusting the program income. So it's adjusted in 2 places on the quarterly report, and you can reference slide 8 of this presentation if you want to know more details about this question. And that's all I have, Mayma. I hope everyone found this helpful. And I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Raisa. Appreciate your going through the questions, and thanks for everyone for the participation. That concludes our presentation. Raisa, do you want to go to the resource slide, whoever's sharing the screen?
Sure.
And if you have any questions, feel free to come off mute. We apologize about the Zoom chat if you had questions about that. Like Raisa and Sue said, we will share the presentation, including the video, this recording for this session for you to review. As Jay stated, we do ask that you start checking your access. Well, first we want you to check the access to the portal, download a template. If you please review your approved application information, your program information, your allocation amount, to make sure that that information is not incorrect. If you find anything that's incorrect, please reach out to us and we will correct that for you. Please start completing the template. If you do get any red flags in the template, please do not submit it. We're happy to hop on the call. Just going to reference the adjustment amounts, just ensure that when you're making an adjustment, you have appropriate explanation and you cannot exceed your admin threshold. So if you're in the 5%, please do not report exceeding 5%. And if you're at 3.3, do not exceed the 3%, as stated by Sue. These are all the resources we discussed throughout this presentation. So these are our principal documents. So please reference that. And please share it with any of your providers or any of your partners. Please reference our policy guidelines, our reporting guidance, and the national compliance standards. We really do highly recommend that. And also it will address any folks that have had some unenrollment issues, not compliance. Please maybe review that and incorporate any step in your review process. Always we ask folks to reference the IG audit from 1.0. And make sure you review the uniform cost principles to make sure that you are aligned and all your admin expenses are compliant. As stated before, the programs team is still putting together the summary data for Q2, but Q1 is available. So please look at that report and compare your performance against other jurisdictions. And if you have any particular questions, let us know. And as always, if you have any questions, any reporting, compliance, or policy questions, please send them to the mailbox and we will be do our best to provide a timely response. If there's something that's urgent, we just ask to please flag that for us. And the more information you have, the better we can respond to your questions. I think that's it. Like Sue said, the window will open on October 1st. So if you have any questions on access, Jay is here. We're all here. We can hop on the call. We just ask you to please submit early. Don't wait till 11:59 p.m. on the 30th to submit. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, feel free to come off mute. And again, we do appreciate your time today. Thanks for attending this session, and we hope you found it useful. And if you have no questions, feel free to drop. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Raisa, Sue. Grace, and thank you, Jay. Thank you.